What happens when you follow instructions that make no sense at all? Imagine facing a powerful enemy, surrounded by massive walls, and your only weapon is something as simple as marching around those walls. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Yet, this was exactly what God asked Joshua and the Israelites to do as they approached Jericho. The walls of Jericho, towering and impenetrable, stood as a symbol of the impossible. But Joshua's faith turned this impossible task into an incredible victory. In this story, we learn about faith, obedience, trust, and the power of God's plan. So let's explore the incredible journey of Joshua and the Battle of Jericho, where faith led to a miracle that changed everything. The power of faith. Can you imagine being in a battle where your only weapon is faith? That's the incredible situation Joshua and his army faced when they were instructed to march around the walls of Jericho. The Israelites were not told to attack, not told to prepare weapons, but to trust in God's plan. It seems almost absurd, doesn't it? The city of Jericho was one of the most fortified cities of the time, and God's instructions were completely out of the ordinary. No one would have believed that marching and blowing trumpets could tear down such a stronghold. But Joshua and the Israelites didn't question God's wisdom. They obeyed, showing us the power of faith when we trust in God's directions, no matter how strange they seem. This was no ordinary battle. It wasn't about strategy or military strength. It was about putting God's plan into action, no matter how strange it seemed. Joshua knew that faith wasn't passive. It required action, courage, and obedience. And when the Israelites followed God's command, the walls of Jericho fell without a single arrow fired. This remarkable victory reminds us that faith is a force that can move mountains, or in this case, tear down walls. It shows us that when God is in control, the impossible becomes possible. Lessons of obedience. We've all been in situations where we thought we knew the best way to handle things, right? But what if God's way is different, even unexpected? That's exactly what we see in the Battle of Jericho. Joshua could have chosen to lead his army with conventional tactics, but instead, he followed God's unusual instructions. The lesson here is simple but profound. Obedience leads to success. The Israelites obeyed God, even when his command seemed strange. Imagine how they must have felt walking around those massive walls, doing nothing but following orders. This is where the power of obedience becomes clear. The Israelites didn't just hear God's command, they acted on it. We live in a world where everyone has an opinion on the best way to handle things. But this story reminds us that when we obey God, even when His direction seems unclear or counterintuitive, He works in ways that we can't always understand. God's plans are always higher than ours, and His instructions lead to victory. Joshua didn't take matters into his own hands. He followed God's plan and witnessed a miraculous outcome. This teaches us that success in life isn't just about having the right skills or resources. It's about obedience to God's will. The role of trust in overcoming obstacles. We all face obstacles in life that seem too big to overcome. Whether it's a personal challenge, a health issue, or a difficult situation at work, these obstacles can feel insurmountable. Just like the towering walls of Jericho, they appear unmovable. But Joshua's faith in God's power teaches us that no obstacle is too big for God. Joshua and the Israelites didn't have the strength to tear down those walls on their own. But they trusted God. And that trust made all the difference. In our own lives, It's easy to get overwhelmed by our obstacles. We may feel like there's no way around the walls in front of us. But when we trust in God, He can help us overcome what seems impossible. Just as He made the walls of Jericho fall, He can break through the barriers in our lives. The key is to trust that God has a plan, even when we don't see the full picture. The Israelites didn't understand how marching around the city would cause the walls to fall, but they trusted that God's plan was better than theirs. Trust in God is what enables us to move forward when everything seems to be standing in our way. The significance of silence and waiting. Sometimes, the hardest part of faith is waiting. We live in a world that demands instant results, where patience is often seen as a weakness. But in the story of Jericho, God showed the Israelites that waiting and silence can be just as powerful as action. For 6 days, the Israelites marched around the city in silence, trusting in God's timing. On the 7th day, they marched around 7 times and blew their trumpets, and the walls came down. The silence was a form of discipline and patience. It was a time for the Israelites to reflect, trust, and wait for God's perfect timing. Sometimes we feel like we need to act quickly to get results, but God's timing is always perfect. The lesson of silence and waiting is crucial for us today. We may feel like we're not getting answers or breakthroughs quickly enough, but God is working behind the scenes. Just as the Israelites had to wait for God's perfect moment, we too must learn to trust His timing. Silence and waiting are not signs of weakness. They are opportunities for growth in faith and patience. Faith in action, a call for today. What if we all took the lessons from the Battle of Jericho and applied them to our own lives today? It's easy to read this story and think that it's just about a historical event. But the principles of faith, obedience, trust, and action are timeless. Just like Joshua and the Israelites, we too face obstacles that seem impossible to overcome. But faith isn't just something we believe in, it's something we act on. When we put our faith into action, incredible things can happen. Joshua's faith didn't end with belief, it led to action. The Israelites could have just stayed in camp, praying and hoping for the walls to fall, but they took action. They marched around Jericho, doing exactly what God told them to do, and because of their obedience, they saw a miracle. This story challenges us to put our faith into action today. What is God calling you to do, even when it doesn't make sense? Maybe it's a step of faith that seems ridiculous. But when we trust God and obey, the impossible becomes possible. Just like Joshua's faith led to the fall of Jericho, our faith can lead to breakthroughs in our own lives. Joshua's faith and obedience didn't just win a battle, they paved the way for the Israelites to enter the promised land. In the same way, our faith can open doors for us to experience the promises God has for us. No matter what challenges we face, God's plan for our lives is always greater than anything we could imagine. Reflection on God's faithfulness. Looking back at the Battle of Jericho, we can see that it wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about God's faithfulness to His promises. The Israelites had waited for generations to enter the promised land, and God kept His promise. The victory at Jericho was a clear reminder that God is faithful to His word. He had promised to give the land to the Israelites, and He did. This story also reminds us to reflect on God's faithfulness in our own lives. How many times have we seen God come through for us even when we didn't know how things would turn out? Just like the Israelites, we can look back and see the many ways God has been faithful to us. His promises never fail, and He is always working in our lives, even when we don't see it. The collapse of Jericho's walls wasn't just a victory, it was a testament to God's faithfulness and His ability to keep His promises. The Battle of Jericho teaches us many valuable lessons about faith, obedience, trust, and God's faithfulness. Joshua and the Israelites faced an impossible challenge, but their faith in God led to a miraculous victory. The walls of Jericho fell, not because of military power, but because of the faith and obedience of God's people. This story encourages us to trust in God's plan, to obey His instructions, and to take action based on our faith. When we do, we too can experience the miracles and breakthroughs that come from putting our faith into action. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear more inspiring stories, make sure to subscribe to Story of Grace. We bring you more powerful lessons from the Bible that can change your life. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Keep trusting, keep believing, and remember, with faith in action, no wall is too strong to fall.